Hello everybody, Beard Reads Books here, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Vertical Plane by Ken Webster. And this is the first edition that I'm doing a review on. And it's kind of an interesting book. In a nutshell, it's about communication through time. So what basically happened was, this is set in the 1980s, and Ken and Debbie, they were living in a village called Doddleston near the Welsh border. And to start with, the first sort of things that started happening was like stereotypical poltergeist type activities, things being moved around, sort of stacked up in piles in the kitchen and all the rest. So that was like the first kind of unusual stuff to happen. But then what started happening was, because Ken works as a teacher at a local grammar school, and every now and again he'd borrow a computer from the school and take it home. And him and Debbie, they started receiving messages on this computer, sort of randomly and mysteriously, claiming to be from this person from the 1540s, a character who first of all started using the name Lucas, a bit of a pseudonym, but then eventually revealed that his name was Thomas. And this Thomas character lived in Doddleston in a sort of in the same property that Ken and Debbie were living in the 1980s. And obviously, like I said, he sent them a message, and then because they started replying and sort of built up a bit of a rapport. And there was a bit of confusion between the two parties to start with, because both parties considered the other party to be sort of intruders in their home. Thomas was considered Ken and Debbie to be sort of like some kind of like demons or whatever, sort of intruding into his house, whereas Ken and Debbie saw Thomas as being an intruder into their home. And the first few messages to come through from Thomas, Ken and Debbie's attitude was, "Oh, this must be some kind of a hoax. What's going on here? Messages from the past. What on earth?" But then over time, they started to sort of they built up a bit of a rapport with this Thomas character, and slowly but surely started to sort of stray more to the side of believing. I mean, Ken, one of his work colleagues, Peter, I think he was a work colleague if I remember rightly, but this Peter, he was a bit of an expert in languages and all the rest. So they'd shown Thomas's messages to Peter so we could sort of have a look at it and analyse the language and all the rest. And this Peter said, "Well, look, the way the words that are being used, the way they're being spelt, and sort of the sentence structures of the messages, it's all pretty accurate for sort of the West Country 16th century." He was basically saying this is fairly accurate for how somebody would have, from Doddleston area, would have written messages during the 1540s. So Pete was basically saying, if this is a hoax, it's not being done by some random Joe Blogs down the pub who's had a 2 or 3 pints and suddenly got it into their head they're going to play a bit of a prank. This is a hoax that's being carried out by somebody who's a bit of an expert in writing sort of very authentic sounding messages, so so automatically dismissing the possibility of it being done by just some random Joe Blogs. But this wasn't a straightforward case of sort of communications going back and forth between the 16th century and the 1980s, because what started to happen was, after Ken and Debbie had been communicating with Thomas for a while, they started receiving messages from a group of people who claimed to be from the year 2109. And this group of people, they claimed to be running an experiment, and Ken and Debbie and Thomas were supposedly part of this experiment. But the people from the future, they wouldn't have revealed exactly what this experiment was. And they also admitted to the fact that it was them that had given a computer to Thomas. They'd gone back to the 1540s to give Thomas a computer to enable him to communicate both with them and also with Ken and Debbie. Very, 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 very bonkers idea, isn't it? It's very bonkers. And that's kind of essentially the sort of the nutshell of the story. I mean, Ken and Debbie, they were very much sort of disbelieving to begin with. They did sort of think it was quite a bit of a hoax. But as time went by, they started to believe in it a bit more. But a lot of people, they did get various people involved to sort of investigate what was going on. And all these people who investigated, so they were very dismissive. They were like, oh no, hoax. No, messages through time can't happen. Somebody's faking it. Somebody's like having a laugh here. But I mean, considering the amount of time and effort that would have gone into hoaxing it, and considering the fact that to fake very convincing sort of messages from the 1540s, if it's a hoax, it does raise a question, well, who exactly is doing it, and why are they doing it? What are they hoping to gain? I'm not sure I fully believe in it actually being true. I find it hard to believe that sort of communications through time have been happening. But at the same time, I sort of think, why would somebody go to all that time and effort? I mean, if it had just been a sort of like a handful of messages, say half a dozen messages purporting to be from the past, and then that was it, I could kind of understand that. But then why did somebody keep it up? So yeah, I'm not sure about that. I must admit, in equal parts, this story is in equal parts interesting and equal parts, well, I wouldn't say irritating, but the communications between Ken and Debbie and with Thomas, I really enjoyed sort of reading those communications, or reading about that. Even if it's a hoax, those bits were very enjoyable. And I really, the thought of like two people like communicating through time like that was very interesting, because Ken and Debbie, they were sort of, when they were writing to Thomas, they were like, what's it like sort of in the 16th century? Tell me about sort of where you live, like describe the village, sort of what you're getting up to, that kind of thing. And Thomas, he was sort of, when he was writing to them, he was sort of saying, oh yeah, well, tell me about the future, what it's like in the 1980s and that. So it was that aspect. It made for, if it's real, it's like, wow, it's like, just think how amazing that would be to be able to communicate with somebody in the past or with somebody in the future, and like sort of be able to learn about these different time periods. And if it's all a hoax, if it's all a load of like cobblers, well, it makes for an interesting science fiction story. It's you can read it as a very enjoyable science like sci-fi story. But when it comes to the sort of communications between Ken and Debbie and the people from the future, I didn't really enjoy that bit because the people from the 2109 come across as a bit arrogant and you know like trying to think of how to put it without using like rude words, but yeah, they're just irritating people. They're really irritating, and yeah, I mean that bit. I mean, okay, if it's all true, if this is like if this really did really genuinely happen, then obviously that had to be included to sort of give a complete picture of what really happened. But I mean, if it's really just a load of old cobblers, then that I think that should have been left out. The whole like storyline of people from the future conducting experiments and not wanting to reveal what it was. Yeah, I think that part of the story sort of really dragged the book down. I thought, yeah, I didn't really enjoy that bit. But even though it had that sort of major dead weight to it, the whole sort of people from the future bit, it was still kind of interesting to read through. So it's, yeah, I'll tell you something. This is a very expensive book nowadays. Very expensive because there was a bit of a limited run on it, and as a result, prices are sky high nowadays. Now, I first became aware of this book probably about must have been about I think it was about 2009, 2010. And what it was, I was on holiday down in the Algarve with my parents at the time, and one day I went to Portimao and I was having a little look around, came across a second-hand bookshop, and I was having a little look around and spotted a copy of this book. It's for sale for 50p. So I thought, yeah, I'll take a punt on it. 50p, ain't a lot of money. So yeah, picked up the copy and read it. Excuse me. And quite enjoyed it and that. But then a few years later, well, about 2, 3 years later, something like that, I was having a look online and I saw that copies of the book were going for quite a few pounds, sort of serious money for the time. Because at the time I didn't have a well-paid job and a bit of skin and all of that. So I thought, I could hopefully get a bit of money here, and so I put it on eBay and sold it. I sold it on eBay. But then a few years after that, I thought, I wish I'd kept it, because I kind of enjoyed missing having it and sort of being able to read it. But then it was only sort of the last year or so that I started to really regret the fact that I'd sold the copy that I bought back then, because about a year ago, bear with me, Ken Webster he produced a second edition. My wife kindly bought this for me for my birthday, so a month or so ago, and obviously this is, like I said, got a lot of updated information in it. Excuse me. Yeah, so this is got a lot of information of things that have happened in the intervening sort of 30 odd years. And because because my wife was getting me a copy of the second edition for my birthday, I thought I want to get my hands on the first edition. And so I got this copy, and this was the cheapest copy I could find at the time. £150 I spent on it. Quite a bit more than the 50p I spent on it back in 2009, 2010. So like I said, it goes for serious money. And is it worth that amount of money? I would say it's only worth it if you're kind of a serious book collector and you're a bit of a completionist who wants the first edition and the second edition. But I'm going to have a drink a second, guys, bear with me. Sorry about that, I'm starting to get a bit of a tickly throat. But I mean, I'd say if you're a bit of a casual reader and you don't want to go spending a lot of money, I'd say probably stick with the second edition. I haven't read the second edition yet, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the first edition. It's only about, well, you can get copies for about 15 to 20 quid. So quite a bit cheaper. So, I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept, sort of behind the story. I mean, was it a time slip? You know, were there? Because Debbie in the book, because one thing that was happening was Debbie every now and again when she was having dreams, she was kind of going back to the 1540s and being able to meet Lucas. So, was that slips through time? Was she actually time traveling? Was it some kind of astral projection that she was doing while sleeping? Is it all a big hoax? And if so, who was doing it? Why were they doing it? The people from 2109. Now, if it's real, what was the experiment they were doing? Why on earth did they enable Thomas to be able to communicate with Ken and Debbie? Whether you believe this to be true or not, the story does raise a fair few questions. Of course, obviously, Ken, he's produced this book about his experience. Thomas, in some of his messages to Ken and Debbie, he did say that he was gonna sort of produce a book about his experience, so sort of tell his side of the story. And the people from the future, from 2109, they told Ken and Debbie that Thomas did actually write his book. So, if this story is completely, totally, 100% accurate and true, there somewhere out there is a book by this Thomas, written by him in the 1540s, all about his side of this story. So, like I said, that if that book does exist, as far as I'm aware, it hasn't yet been found. Now, if it did ever get found, that would certainly give a lot of weight to the truthfulness of this story. I mean, at the moment we've only got Ken Webster saying, "Oh no, this actually happened." You know, no, I really was communicating with somebody from the 1540s. But I mean, if we were to then find a copy of Thomas's book, a book like a 400-year-old book about somebody communicating with people in the future in the 1980s, if we had Thomas's side of the story, I'd be like, wow, yeah, this is the real deal. This ain't no flipping out, you know. So yes, like I said, a very, 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 very bonkers story indeed. Very bonkers. And yeah, it's if you're into the whole idea of time slips, communication through time, and all that kind of thing, this could well be worth a read. But like I said, the first edition, because it's so expensive, I think it's, and also I think it is quite hard to get hold of a copy. You know, would I recommend going for this edition? Well, like I said a few minutes ago, probably only worth going for this copy if you're a bit of a serious book collector and got deep enough pockets for it. But I mean, for the most part, you might be better off just going for the second edition due to the fact that it's quite a bit cheaper. But like I said, I haven't read this book yet. Sorry. That's a bit of a creepy picture, isn't it? So I'm sitting here doing like talking to you guys, and I've just kind of got this sort of creepy face looking at me, so it's a bit distracting, yeah. But I think for the most part, you're possibly best off getting your hands on the second edition, and take it from there. If having read this one you think it's worth going for the first edition, save your pennies up and go for it. What I'm going to do at some point in the future, I'm going to read through the second edition and sort of do a bit of a review of the second edition. Sort of do a comparison between the two. But anyway, guys, grab this one again. Yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Oh, excuse me. And if any of you have read this one, the first edition, it'd be interesting to hear your views on it. And if you know of any books that are very similar to this one, let me know. Because even though I've got slightly mixed feelings about this book, I did enjoy it enough to definitely want to read sort of any other books that are of a similar vein. So guys, if any of you know of any books that are sort of very similar to The Vertical Plane, drop me a comment, tell me the title of the books and the name of the author, and let me know about it, and yeah, I'll have a look into those. Because yeah, the whole idea of sort of communication through time and stories about communication through time, that kind of thing interests me. I do kind of like those kind of stories. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I'm going to bring this review to an end and look forward to seeing you in the next one. I'm currently reading another Terry Pratchett book. I've currently the first book in the whole Discworld series, The Colour of Magic. So I'll be doing a review on that in the very, very near future. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and happy reading.